They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome to your Sunday night edition of Rogue Ways. It is always good to be here with you. Thank you for being here and supporting the show and loving the show. And please, dear God, share the show. Tell people about the show. Like the show. Leave comments on the show. Do everything that you can easily do to share and help spread the good news and also the support. You know, it's things like that that keep this going, as well as it is things like people going to the site, rogueways.org, checking out the stuff there and seeing all the things I have to offer. I do all kinds of stuff there, and we can just jump right into that. But first, I just want to say what's up to anybody who wants to say hello in the chat, either YouTube or Rockfin. We will be on both for the entirety of the show today. However, if you are on YouTube, I would love it if you hop over to Rockfin. It's even better because they don't censor anybody over there, ever, period. It doesn't happen, as far as I know at least, and hopefully it stays that way forever. And I also want to mention, Aaron, thank you so much for the tip. I appreciate it. That's another way to support the show. Aaron is always in supporting and loving, and I really appreciate that. And I did want to mention, I just sadly saw somebody who I love dearly share this article that said, and this is from the Pacific Northwest, which is where I grew up, so most of my peeps are out there still. And so they shared something that said along the, coast there in the Pacific Northwest that maybe, perhaps, like some billions and billions of sea creatures died because of the heat wave in the Northwest. We all probably are aware that there was this really insane heat wave going on in the Northwest. It was 115 in some places. That's like nearly unheard of in that area. The highest I'd ever experienced before was circa 2003 or so, and it was 103 degrees, and that was really, really crazy at the time. And so, it freaks everybody out. Of course, they say it's global climate change and that it's man-made, but what they don't say is that it is man-made as in geoengineering, not man-made as in overconsumption and car driving and cow farts. And so people don't know often, and they haven't researched the history of weather manipulation, weather control, and geoengineering. And so they just get scared that we're all going to die soon, and it's possible we will, but it's highly unlikely that it's going to happen because of cow farts and overconsumption and red meat and all of that. It's much more likely that it's going to happen because of biological manipulation and geoengineering and, other depopulation methods that are going on. And that is far scarier, but people don't know that. So people are sharing these articles and they're like, all the sea creatures are dying because of this. And I'm like, okay, let's rewind a few years. I don't know if anybody remembers when they were openly geoengineering in the ocean and dumping massive amounts of chemicals off the coast of BC, also the Pacific Northwest area, and millions of sea creatures died because of that. They literally just dumped all this shit into the ocean. They're like, let's just see what happens. And all these animals died, and nobody cared because the media didn't highlight the deaths, and it definitely didn't try to place blame on these geoengineering, experiments that they were doing, like they do instead for this. So we just notice all the time, we all know this here, is that they will focus on whatever they want to focus on, and they'll frame it however they want to frame it in order to get you to react in the way that they want you to react in. We're not supposed to react to the geoengineering. We're not supposed to be upset about that. We're not even really supposed to talk about it. We are supposed to talk about how much we hate ourselves because we're not yet eating a diet primarily of bugs. And it sucks. It sucks to watch people you love go through the emotional turmoil of this. However, I once went through the emotional turmoil of it too and genuinely believed that we had to stop cow farts or else we were all going to die and all of that stuff. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about today, is at that same exact time period, how I was a fully fledged fighting communist and genuinely believed in the worldwide cause and wanted to help my brethren, my comrades, free themselves from the oppression of capitalism. I was willing to do nearly anything to do it. And so we'll talk about that and how I got from there to here. And that's all part of the story. And the geoengineering, the climate change fears, all of this stuff. Basically everything that you could think of. I was a card-carrying leftist and beyond. I was a radical leftist in the form of a communist. And so all of the agenda pieces were in place in my mind. Even though, and maybe even because, I saw the government oppression and corruption throughout most of my life. So I understood there was an enemy to fight against, but they're really good at manipulating your perception of that and aiming at a certain direction. I don't know what's happening. The YouTube, at first it said no one was watching. Now it says a bunch of people are, but it's not showing comments. So if you are commenting there, I'm not seeing it, but I am seeing the Rockfin comments. So if you want to join the discussion and have me see your comments and participate, I think Rockfin might be the place to be. I'm going to say what's up to Snake Jones in the house. Ben Krupa, whoop whoop. We've got 4 inches of rain last night, Snake Jones did. Nice, I love that. Yeah, Mike Morales, I do not know him. Thanks for the tip. Maybe I'll check him out. And Cammie is also here. Cammie, nice to see you / meet you. And let's jump into it, guys. Let's do it. It's a little bit hot here. We got a little bit of sprinkles. We've actually been having a really nice summer. We've had a lot of rain, a lot of cool energy. I don't know if it's because of Mitch, the Oregon Donors, tower busters and things that I have implanted around this area, but it could be, because since then we've had really awesome weather. And he's just doing a show, maybe still going on Chance's channel right now on Interverse. And you can go check that out. I did want to show you the site, of course, as always, rogueways.org. You can go to the shop. You can get tarot readings, soul communication and guidance, ceremonies and healings for you, books that I write, inscribed to you with a special message, jewelry that I make, orgone that I make, blessed crystal and stone items, all kinds of stuff there in the shop section of the site. And you can also just go to the homepage and read all kinds of poetry, articles, and other things. And today I woke up and this urge to write about my time as a communist just fell out of my fingertips. And so I wanted to share this with you, and it actually became an entire show to talk about tonight as well. So I am going to indulgently read you this, but that is because it is pretty concise and not actually that self-indulgent, and it makes the point of the episode about communism that I want to make. So, you know, people ask me, like, how did you get from communism to where you are at now? And I always am like, well, I kept thinking, and I kept asking questions, and that's true. But let's get into the deeper nitty-gritty about it. So I just share that I was a raging full-blown communist activist for years. I fought against police brutality, and to make abortions available to anyone who wanted one on demand. I pretended that it was best to let us overthrow the allegedly elected government and then to force a dictatorship of the proletariat. For those who don't know, the dictatorship of the proletariat is a super fun insanity that pretends that the working class is in direct control of every decision, when truly whoever is high up in the Communist Party makes all the decisions. But totally for sure, for absolute realsies, we promise they do it with your best interest in mind. Trust us. That's a real, actual aspect of being a communist, is you believe in the dictatorship of the proletariat, and even though it's never been done before, you really believe that this time it's going to be done, and that all the people who now own the means of production that you've helped liberate from capitalism, that they will be dictators. It doesn't actually make any sense at all, but they like wrap in all of this nice sounding, philosophical sounding, very erudite treatises on, you know, the dictatorship of the proletariat. And it's amazing. It's amazing when you get down to it and you're like, so how are you going to pull this off? They just don't have an answer. Back then, I pretended I was very oppressed after having been given basically free higher education and free health care for many years, living a pretty affluent lifestyle, especially for an unskilled and unprofessional part-time worker in one of the most beautiful areas on earth. What a poor oppressed person I was. Truly easy and completely lacking in self-reflection were the years I spent organizing rallies and protests against the wars in the Middle East, against the detention of illegal immigrants, and against what I thought was the police state. I hadn't traveled much yet. I hadn't yet seen countries where actual racism was actually systemic and people were disappeared from the street, tortured, and often killed simply for being the wrong color in the wrong neighborhood. I hadn't yet experienced actual transsexuals being beaten to death for wearing the opposite gender's clothing styles. I believed everything I said, and I passionately screamed what I thought was the truth through megaphones. I led chants of, "This is what democracy looks like," and chorus cheering of, "Power, power to the people." If you guys have been to protests, you know, we got the people power. And my personal favorite, "Which side are you on? Which side are you on?" That's one of my favorites too. All of those. Reading communist literature and talking with communists in secret back rooms of seedy bookstores involves just flat out shitloads of logical fallacy, especially circular logic. For example, if you ask how we will eventually cede power back to the actual people after our violent communist takeover, in which we literally force a new government and economic system on the entire nation, you are met with answers such as, the people will already have the power that entire time because they'll own the means of production. We'll give it to them. You see how that works? We will give it to them. We will own it, but trust us, we'll give it away. Okay, sure, you may say to such an answer, but how will we do it? And the answers almost always then devolved into a series of assertions that you should read more Bob Avakian. That's, by the way, the Communist Revolutionary Party, USA's leader in exile. Just a pithy motherfucker. And that this is just something that works itself out as we go. Trust us, it just gets worked out. You just violently overthrow the government, force a new government on the entire country, and things just work themselves out. That's how it goes. If you don't understand that, you just need to read more. Okay. I'm not exaggerating. This is exactly what happened. Another of my favorite pieces of illogic was this constant response to the genuine questions of many people we would talk to in the streets. It went something like this. Why has communism never worked? And what about all the millions it has killed? To which the answer was then, and remains to this day, none of that is true. These are capitalist lies to hide the true bliss of communism, as well as capitalist infiltration into communist states in order to make their system look bad from the inside out. Combined with the fact that no one has ever really done it perfect yet, but we will this time. Trust us. Just trust. There's so much trust involved in this process. Looking back, I'm impressed that this many people go along with such vague promises and empty outlines of progression of the plan. I'm impressed that because it reveals the great lie and the great truth of this entire psychological operation, and that is that it is entirely emotional in nature. There is no logic to it. Not from the start, not in the middle, and least of all at the end. What is required for a thinking person to support communist organizing, agitation, rallying, and protest is essentially an abdication of self-responsibility at the core of every aspect of the person's emotional makeup. When I began to look around at those who were organizing with me, I realized the harsh truth. Not one of them was well. Not exaggeration. Exactly 0 of them were well, emotionally or mentally, and I'm including myself at that time. A few were relatively well physically, especially amongst the communist youth of the party. So what does it say of a movement or organization when it is populated and led entirely by the broken? Another strange psychological perk is that of the rebel. We all relate to the rebellious stages of life, and we all truly do experience oppression and unfairness toward which it is sensible to rebel against. Corruption actually does surround us at every level of our government, from local to federal. We should be upset, and we should be organizing, and we should remove the aspects of our system that have become rotten. And there are nearly infinite rotting pieces in this structure. We just shouldn't pretend it is best to restructure or clean house through violent overthrow, growing out of personal failures and emotional disease, forcing it on an entire nation of individuals who didn't ask for it, and then taking it upon ourselves to hopefully one day, vaguely, sort of, somehow, transfer power to literally everyone. The people around me when I was a communist were absolutely and thoroughly emotionally broken. The leader of my faction and region, whose real name I still don't know to this day, and she probably doesn't know mine. Actually, she probably does for other reasons that we'll get to. Would consistently talk of the constant childhood rape at the hands of her local police. Her mother would escape drug and prostitution charges by letting this police person rape her own child for years. That kind of abuse and torture takes the strength of a soul and years and years and years of healing to repair. But this leader of ours had never done an ounce of healing. Her genuine desire involved killing all cops. This, nearly 20 years before the outbreak of socialist, communist-leaning freak storms of outrage that poured across our city streets over the last few years, here in 2021. Another of our prominent leaders was a young man who once led a small gathering of us from a college campus speak out to running through the streets from cops with our flags flying behind us. Communist flags, by the way. There was no way in hell any of us would have kept or carried a US flag. Why did he do this? Simply because the cops had shown up. The cops weren't even threatening to shut down our unpermitted rally, and they weren't interfering. They were just there. Their station was literally across the street, so it wasn't even surprising in the least. But simply because they walked up, our fearless leader led us running and screaming, first through a college building with classes in session, I should add, and then through the congested city streets and traffic. Why? To score some badass points? To pretend that we were finally engaging directly against the bad guys? I can only be sure that it was pointless, immature, reactive, and misguided. Choices like that don't come from true leaders of healthy stature. They come from strange creatures of needy egos who want attention and credit that they didn't do much to earn. These cracks began to appear to me because I never stopped questioning. Thank God. I saw the lack of sense, especially in the post-revolution stages of the plan. I saw the failing hearts and minds of the people around me. I saw the constant self-pity and self-loathing oozing out of all of my comrades. I saw how it was just another club, just another way to feel connected to something meaningful, and just another way to avoid fixing oneself and one's community in ways that were real and meaningful. The final crack appeared when I at last found out a piece of the puzzle that crossed the one line I've always been so grateful to possess. And this is the line where anyone still enamored by the lie of the promise of communism will disavow me as a reject who broke under the pressures of the programming of the capitalist states. My line, I learned then and have reinforced in a million tiny and large ways since then, is in the nature of my being, which is to say that it surrounds my understanding that I am primarily a consciousness and a soul, and secondarily a physical body named Lindsay. This was the breaking point. No one, not anyone, not agnostics, nor Christians, nor Muslims, or Zoroastrians are allowed to practice or believe in any faith or spirituality. Not in a communist state and world. Why? It should go without saying that spirituality and faith in something beyond our flesh is anathema to communism. Otherwise, there would not be a hard line in the communist and socialist movements of pure atheism and materialism. While they'll never see it, their obsession with atheism and materialism are literally faith-based and absolutely essential to the success of their mission. Simply put, you cannot give your life to the state, communist or not, if you know that your soul transcends the state. You cannot accept the necessity of killing and sacrificing millions of lives to the atheist, materialist, psychotic dream of centralized, ultimate control of the entire economy if you believe that each of those bodies represents a unique consciousness and soul. When I realized this wasn't just an idea about perhaps doing away with the old, outdated religious organizations that spanned the globe, but an idea that required literally stamping out any and all hints of any spirituality, I left and I never looked back. I'm grateful for the line around my soul that led me both to experience this delusion of communism deeply, while also breaking free from it once I had fully understood its core. Communism promises the impossible. Everyone will have everything they need and want while working happily to produce what everyone needs and wants in perpetuity. Amen. Inequality will end as every person gets exactly the same as everyone else, no matter their personal choices, level of ability, commitment to excellence, or love of their craft or work. The leaders with power will suddenly be incapable of abusing power, cementing power, further centralizing power, or taking more than their fair share in this glorious, unicorn-coded future of humanity. We just have to get rid of those damn capitalists. Capitalism is the only thing that promotes greed and power hunger, obviously, or else why would we work so hard to end it? It is neat that in this glorious future, because we have no souls and are automatons that work happily forever, we have no responsibility to heal ourselves from childhood rape or economic hardships and lack. The saddest part of the whole story is this. I don't believe that even our broken, horribly abused leader was legit. I believe that was a classic CIA operative. She was fantastic at never doing a drop of work, grooming young people who were disaffected and broken into doing her bidding, and creating emotional foment to hurl in any direction she chose. Sure, maybe she was just that type of a maniac, but we all know the CIA and other operations infiltrate literally every group that exists, including massive knitting circles, because they just can't help themselves. So when you see a coordinated and media-promoted uproar that spans the nation in every major city, populated with youth and broken souls calling for communism all throughout 2020, you have to see it for what it is. It isn't just a series of unfortunate personal failures. It is also a tool of your government to take even more power and control. Who got power from this cascade of communist sympathy and agitation? Joe Biden, the crustiest fixture of concentrated power we could find in this system. Kamala Harris, the literal cop who jailed more black and brown people than anyone, unfairly and for longer than legally allowed. The corporations and psychopathic elite families who have held a vice grip on our media and production for centuries. Not you, not me, not any small business owners I know, not any regular people anywhere in this gigantic, beautiful country. Power only concentrated and flowed upward during this entire communist fete that spanned the nation. The system wants you to break. The system wants you to give up your authority and sovereignty. The system wants you to crumple inward emotionally to the point that you are sure you can never heal, so that it can entice you further into dependence on its offerings and wares. It whispers, you can't possibly do it yourself. Let us feed you bugs and give you free housing and payment. We will offer you what we call health care, where you have no choice and no true health. We will take care of you like no one ever did or ever could. The truth is, you are the only one who have ever could have taken care of you, and you are the only one who will ever be able to take care of you. If you aren't doing that, someone else owns your soul, heart, mind, and body. You are their slave. They don't relinquish their slaves easily, and they're not going to empower you to take back the system once you give it to them. Refuse communism, read history, see the damage that the giant lie of forced economic equality has done, see the power it has concentrated and kept amongst the top tier of our economic classes, see how it has never enriched the lives or improved the quality of life of any people it has been invited to conquer. Don't allow a weakened emotional self to invite in the vampire that promises more than anyone could ever deliver. Heal yourself, feel the broken parts inside, and take responsibility for them. I did. I was a communist. I feel much better now. And I love this. I don't know who Fulton J. Sheen is, but this little quote I found that communism is an aggressive religion of the species. It's absolutely true. It is such a religion. You have to have blind faith in order to believe that never in the history of mankind has communism succeeded, but this time it will. You have to have blind faith to believe that you should, in fact, go through force to force people to give up spiritual beliefs. This was it flabbergasted. I was like, wait, you're not just talking about religion? You mean literally any spirituality? Yes, they mean any spirituality. They don't mean religion. You are not. You can be an atheist and a materialist, and that's it. And anything else is capitalist roading, and it will be punished. And we've seen it be punished in every time that they take over. You are not allowed to have any of your tradition or spirituality intact at all. You have to have blind faith in this system called communism to see that that has never turned out well, but think that it will this time. You have to have blind faith to think that somehow this is going to be the time where you concentrate power, you seize the power, but it somehow gets back to people again, even though it never has before. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. But it's so addictive, and it is so attractive to people. And that main point that I'm making is that it is attractive to people who are broken, and it's attractive to people who haven't yet learned to take responsibility for their lives in a radical way, because it's really easy to see the things that are unfair in our system and our world, and then blame all of our failings on that, and just give up and say, well, you can't take care of any of that, and so you take care of me instead. It will never work that way. It will never, ever work. And sadly, sorry, you're going to have to heal yourself. Like, that's the only option. You can heal yourself, or you can end up someone's slave. You know, and we talk about this on Rogue Ways and Middle Path a lot, where You know, we're literally making the swords that we like then hand to the people to cut our heads off. We do this all the time. We do it especially in the form of fear. If we are fearful of a thing, then they use it against us, right? Oh, you're fearful of getting sick, so now we're going to shut down your entire society and just fuck the next, like, however many generations because of your fear of getting sick, right? Any fear you have, they will exploit and control you with. And this is just another one of those, right? Any weakness you have inside of you that you haven't healed yet, whether you were raped by cops as a child or whether, you know, it's something completely different, like you broke your arm once on a corporation's like faulty machine or something, you know, like it doesn't matter what it is. If you have that and it's still something in you that's unhealed and you're full of emotional chaos and conflict in it, then it's going to be used against you. And this is just one more way they do it. Like, oh, isn't the world unfair? Well, come over here. We'll take care of you for the rest of your life. And it's ridiculous. And the thing that really bothers me too is that I was led to, through my education and through this type of training, communist training, to hate my country, to hate it, to really believe that the whole world hated the United States, and to believe that I should, and to believe that it was the worst country that ever existed. And I believed it, you know, and I am really grateful for people like JP, Awaken with JP. If you don't know, he's doesn't need my help in promoting his content, but I just love him so much because people like him really helped me eventually get to the place where I could see this really is the best country in the world. Maybe the best country that's ever existed. I don't know what happened before the like mud flood reset, whatever. Maybe there was way better, who knows. But the best that I can, you know, point to and say, here's what seems to exist. The United States is pretty awesome. And he goes through in this episode, helping morons understand why America is awesome, how it really is one of the few countries where people actually do have legal protection as per their religious beliefs, their race, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, or anything else. One of the few places where that's actually protected and guaranteed. It's one of the few places where we don't actually have massive amounts of actual systemic racism or oppression of some group. It's one of the few places where your speech is still somewhat, at least allegedly, protected, and where censorship isn't the norm and isn't legal in many ways. And there's just so many other things. So I'm just going to point that out. I not only am not a communist now, I actually have great love and respect for our country and what it is supposed to be, and the rights we're supposed to have, even though we've given many of them away and have not fought to keep a lot of them. The ideal and the reality have been pretty fucking amazing, actually. So having now traveled extensively, as I hadn't when I was a communist, and seen so many countries where shit is fucked. Shit is fucked. I've been to something like 30 other countries on something like 5 continents, and shit is fucked in most places. Like, fucked. Like, it is disgusting. It's dirty. It's awful. People are living in fucking squalor often. There's just cats and dogs almost everywhere I've ever been. Just fucking everywhere. Like, running everywhere because there's not enough money or wealth or freedom to worry about animals, so they just run rampant. And anyways, I could go on. I could do a whole show on the shit that I've seen in other countries that just proves how really fucking lucky we are in America. But I'll just stop gushing and just say, yeah, it's a fucked up country with a lot of problems, and it's also one of the best we've ever had, and has routes instilled in it that might actually allow us to fix it, and that is more than you can say of most places. So I like it. I like it a lot. But let's look. A lot of people don't even know what communism really is, so we'll talk about that really briefly. But first, I'm going to see what people have been chatting about. YouTube, I can see comments now. Yes, I was very naive and supported tyranny. It's true. Rex Colt, nice to see you. Marker 113, thank you. Awkwardly Awesome is here. Bex Rock is in the house. Awakening Our Truth is here. Nice to see you. Mojo Shop, Joey for Track, Louie, all y'all. If you want to, you can hop over to Rockfin, where there are even more people chatting there, and we will see what they're saying. Rock on. Thank you, Esther Barre. Esoter Barre. However you say your really cool name. Yes, nice to see you all. And so, communism. Yes, this is Wikipedia, of course, but Wikipedia is generally presenting what the masses of people understand to be truth, whether it is or not. Communism is a philosophical, social, political, and economic ideology and movement whose ultimate goal is the establishment of a communist society, namely a socio-economic order structured upon the ideas of common ownership of the means of production and the absence of social classes, money, and in some cases, the state. So this is what I used to argue, is that communism was the best because we would have to like uninstall capitalism, uninstall these very rich, very wealthy elite classes of people, redistribute the income downward, and then seize the means of production and then give it back to the people. And all of that would require some kind of a state for a time. But once everyone had the means of production and there was no one with way too much wealth, you could abolish the state, and this would be perfect anarchy now. And that was actually what my ideal, and my ideal still is perfect anarchy. I just had thought that communism was the best way to get to perfect anarchy. And I have now much amended that to understand that the best way to get to perfect anarchy is to live in perfect anarchy from right now until forever. And I've done whole shows on just anarchy. Anarchy is for lovers. As an episode I did a while ago, so if you want to get into my ideas about anarchy, you can go back to that show. But anyways, just to give myself a little bit of credit, I was actually interested in getting to this anarchist utopia, and I thought you could do it through communism. But that is what communism really is. It's seizing the means of production, it's distributing wealth downwards, and supposedly therefore equalizing all classes so that there are no classes based on economic disparity, and eventually you try to get rid of the state, money, and all of it. This sounds great. Sounds awesome. You know, the first time I learned about communism was in high school in a political economics class, economic, whatever, socioeconomic. I don't remember what the class actually was, but I do remember the project was to learn about every type of economy and government and then arrange them all on a some sort of visual representation and then decide which one you liked best and then design a society around it. And I chose communism, and my teacher fucking lost his mind. He was like, "You bleeding heart liberal, you can't do this. It's not right. It's not you. You love people too much to do communism. It kills people." And I was like, this guy's insane. Like, look at his programming. He can't even handle me liking communism. And it started to really like push me towards communism because I thought, well, if my own teachers are like programmed to just respond this way against it, it must actually be like kind of cool. And then I like, whatever, the rest is history. But it does. It sounds nice. It's very appealing. It's very appealing to think that we could undo the massive power differential that exists because of the massive economic differential in our world. You know, and this psychopath class is incredibly wealthy, and it is very enticing to undo that. But just like we talked about with the government, I don't even actually remember what episode it was now, where we were talking about the forceful overthrow of government and how ridiculous it is to plan or partake in that. Because the government is the one getting you to do it. This is serving their goals, and we'll get into that too. But they do the same with communism. They're like, okay, you want that? Well, we'll pretend to give it to you, and in the meantime, we'll concentrate more power and kill a bunch of you. Ta-da! It's beautiful. They're very, very elegant in their psychopathy. And let's talk about tyranny. Tyranny can be in any type of government or economic or social system, because tyranny is literally just oppressive power. It's just abuse of and oppression using your power. And that's it. And so sometimes people say a certain government is tyrannical or practices tyranny, and that's totally appropriate. Many of them do. Ours is definitely using oppressive power right now and for the past year and a half, supposedly because of an emergency, a state of emergency, and that's often how it goes, supposedly to keep us safe, and that's often how it goes. But they're definitely oppressing people. They're shutting down businesses, they're controlling the economy, they're overreaching, they're doing things that are against the Constitution. All of this, that's tyranny. What is fascism? Well, fascism used to not be left or right. But now, if you look at Wikipedia and certain other places, it does say that fascism is a form of far-right authoritarian ultranationalism. And that's just not true. Again, Wikipedia, we don't trust them. They're literally an arm of the agency to try and control minds. And so that's them. But even Merriam-Webster, for a minute, I don't know if you guys remember this, but for a minute they were also saying that it was a far-right thing. But now you can actually find definitions that don't talk about far-right, which is nice because it's not. What fascism actually is a political philosophy, movement, or regime that exalts a nation and often race above the individual and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. If you read this and you understand it, and we'll see a quote in a second that highlights a central aspect of fascism, but controlling the economy, controlling social regimentation as in classes of people and who does what and is allowed to go where, centralized, autocratic, dictatorial, all of these can be used to define every communist regime and country we have seen in the history of ever. So all examples of communism that I can find have also been fascist. Nazi, you may remember, was National Socialist. Nazis. We're socialists. Socialist is light. It's communism light. Socialism is like, we're not going to abolish the government necessarily, but we are going to try to give more power to the people, and we're going to control the economy a lot. And we're going to say we're doing that for your benefit, but really we're just going to concentrate power. It's communism light. So communism light, socialists, they're nationalist often, and they're often fascist. Benito Mussolini himself said fascism should more appropriately be called corporatism because it is a merger of state and corporate power. That is state and economic power. That is such as the government saying, hey, Facebook, Twitter, you should probably ban people who talk about this and that, and Twitter and Facebook going, okay, and jumping through that hoop, or vice versa. Facebook and Twitter saying, hey, government, we want you to do this, and the government being like, okay. This merger of unelected corporate moneyed interests and our supposedly elected government is fascism. So I would say that we're living under tyrannical fascism right now. We're not yet communist. The government doesn't technically own the means of production or control the economy, although for a long time you could argue the government has had way too many fingers in our economic system, and so we've never been far off from heading towards socialism and communism, honestly. By the way, Esoterbare was saying, where are the bring out your dead wagons if Covidius minimums were a thing? Covidius minimus was a thing. And it's interesting because I just saw something that claims that worldwide there are tens of thousands of deaths due to experimental medication in the face of that alleged pandemic. Way, 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 way more than anyone would have thought, and much higher than supposed deaths from the other thing. So if that's true, I would not doubt it. I don't actually know a way to prove it yet. But we talked about it a long time ago when we were looking at the VAERS reporting system, and the numbers coming out of that seem to indicate that this was a far deadlier medication than many before it. Yes, Shockin' Bush, Louie, everybody over on Joey 4-Track, Mojo Shop, all of you guys go sign up for Rockfin now. It's easy. You do it once, and then you can always go in. You can get me and all sorts of other shows over there. It's wonderful. There's a link right below you. Click over. Join the fun. Let's also look at the 10 stages of fascism, and this is adapted from Naomi Wolf's The End of America, a letter of warning to a young patriot. But it's based on historical analysis, and number one is that often a terrifying internal and external enemy are invoked, and especially a faceless threat or a nebulous threat that can be molded to whatever they need. We saw this first, well, we've seen it forever, but we saw it really come on the scene with the whole towers falling situation and blaming that on certain other countries and factions, and then, this nebulous idea of just terrorism in general, and that could be anyone, and then we saw certain groups. The groups can always change names and locations and do whatever they want them to do in order to keep us scared. Creating a gulag, we haven't necessarily created a gulag, but the subtext says install a prison system that exists outside of the rule of international law. Oh wait, we did do that. Yeah, we did do that. It was called, oh my god, I just had Guantanamo Bay. But we also had found just a few years ago, this is a big news story if you remember, it's gone down the memory hole, but if you remember, especially in Chicago, we found black prison sites, black because they were off of the, official lists or systems or whatever, where they would take people to interrogate them or hold them without bail. And this was done under the guise of the Homegrown Terrorist Act and other shit that came out with 9/11. The tyranny has been tightening for years and years, and people are really noticing this the past year or so. And every time it's the same. Oh, they would never do that. They would never do that. Oh, they did that, but they wouldn't go this far. It's like, well, they've already set all this in motion because they plan to use it. Will they? Hopefully not. Hopefully we thwart them somehow, but they've definitely done step 1 and 2. Number 3, develop a thug caste, or rather create private armies that wage war and coordinate disaster response. I wonder if we could count BLM and Antifa as a thug caste. I wonder if I were still a communist agitator, I would be out in the streets with these same people thinking that I was doing righteous work and able to pull off all kinds of political and social maneuvers on behalf of the ruling class without thinking that I was doing it on behalf of the working class. Super interesting. That might be the thug caste, but we also have other private armies, private militias, like what were they? Blackwater? I think Blackwater, maybe. You guys know who I'm talking about. We've seen them in all kinds of false flags over the years. And organizations like that. Number 4, set up an internal surveillance system. Clearly, every camera, I'm sure all of us carrying around devices all the time with cameras and microphones. There's closed circuit TV and whatever and all over every city. They even have ways of triangulating your exact location using your cell phone data and other things. Voice, they can pick up audio without actually being able to hear, without even being able to see your lips, by measuring the acoustic vibrations of items in the room with you. So if they can see through part of your window, they can see and hear what you're saying. And all kinds of stuff like that. So yep, check. 1, 2, 3, and 4, I'll check so far. Number 5, censor, defund, and harass organized groups and NGOs that do not toe the party or state line. Check who? This whole many years we've been talking about cancel culture and censorship, defunding, refunding, all sorts of stuff, and all sorts of groups. It's all political in nature, and we all know it. Check. Number 6, engage in arbitrary detention and release. Yeah, check. What? Julian Assange, maybe number 1. But even Antifa, they're like, we're going to arrest you in some places and not other places. We're going to arrest you and then we're going to release you. They're doing this with people for COVID. They've been taking people in for various things like mask related and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, arbitrary as fuck. But that would get much worse. But we've already seen it, is the point. Number 7, target specific individuals, harass, shame, and criminalize them. Oh, I don't know, maybe all of the supposed right wing, right? If you are anything right of center, you are a radical terrorist to them. You are a hateful, insane individual who's full of like white power and racism or whatever fucking bullshit they're spewing now. Yes, you've shamed and criminalized that for sure. Just anyone who's a patriot, anyone who believes that we should maybe try to fight for our rights, anyone who believes that we should try to count votes, like any of that, you are shamed, harassed, and targeted. Number 8, control the distribution of information. Check on every single social media site, every single place we can. And even if you got a social media site that you can access pretty easily without censorship, they then also have algorithms and backdoors and programs that they can just install on your devices specifically to fuck you up. Check. Number 9, criminalize pundits, protesters, and dissidents, make opposition treasonous. Check. That whole right-wing attack thing. Anybody who's not going along with the agenda is like trying to destroy the United States and very nationalist, very, very suspect. And number 10, suspend the rule of law. We're kind of there too. We kind of have all 10 stages done. If you can make laws that are illegal, such as forcing people to wear masks or shut down their businesses, then yeah, you've kind of suspended the rule of law. It's not gone full martial law yet, but we've tipped in that direction. So just a reminder of where we're at in this fascist system that we are in, this tyrannical fascist system that is heading more and more towards communism. And just a reminder that all communist movements have required the destruction and the relinquishment of guns of their citizens by force or request, and other places also have, and every time it has resulted in death. Sometimes very intentional genocide, very intentional targeting, very intentional starvation, and things like that. And sometimes as a incidental of removing guns, there's actually a lot of evidence to show that even more people will be murdered. You can see this in the UN's own reports. I think I did a show on this too at some point, like a really long time ago, but you can go look at the UN reports on gun violence and violence in general, murder and violence in general, and see that in places where they have taken away people's guns, murder rates go up and violence goes up distinctly every time. So you can look at both sides of this. You take guns away and then the government tends to exterminate people and you take guns away and people start to exterminate each other. And it makes sense if you think about it. Right now, especially in the United States, if you're smart, you're probably wary of trying to inflict violence on someone else because they're very likely to have a gun, actually. We're like one of the highest numbers of gun ownership in the world. But if you knew for sure that no one had a gun and you were still that same type of person, which will still exist when our guns might be gone, then you're happy to go and rape and kill and do whatever the fuck you want because you are pretty sure that no one's going to be able to stop you. Check in with the chats. Shakim and Yeti Slang in the house. Nice to see. Oh, yay! Shakim made it over. I love it. If you're on YouTube right now, you're missing out. All the fun's on Rockfin. Thank you, all the Rockfin people and YouTube people. I love you too, but come on, come over to Rockfin. So, little gun history. 1929, the Soviet Union established gun control from 1929 to 1953. 20 million dissidents unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. 1911, Turkey established gun control. 1915 to 1917, 1.5 million Armenians were rounded up and exterminated. Germany established gun control in 1938, and from 39 to 45, 13 million Jews or others were allegedly exterminated. China established gun control in 1935. From 48 to 52, 20 million political dissidents rounded up and exterminated. Guatemala established gun control in 64. From 64 to 81, 100,000 Mayan Indians were rounded up and exterminated. Uganda, 1970. From 71 to 79, 300,000 Christians rounded up and exterminated. Cambodia, in 1956, established gun control. From 1975 to 77, 1 million educated people rounded up and exterminated. 56 million people. And that's just an estimate. There are people who think it's much higher than that for various reasons, and there's people who think it's much lower than that. But either way, even if you went with this, general estimate of 56 million, that's fucking insane. That absolutely hands down that people who have guns are much less likely to be exterminated by their government. Joe Biden famously recently said something like, oh, you need like nukes and fucking laser sharks to get us or whatever. And it's like, no, you wouldn't want the guns so bad, just like every country before you, unless you needed it in order to control people more. Whether they plan to exterminate or not becomes a lot easier to do so and to do other aspects of control if the people are defenseless. No, you can't probably stop like a fucking jet fleet of bombers, but obviously the majority of people would have to be taken out or rounded up or forced to a certain area or forced to enact certain things they didn't want to do by other people. And you can stop other people with guns, and that is actually the point. They're not going to just swarm the country with laser shark jet bombs. We don't actually need nukes. We need guns. So keep your guns. If they do have anything that comes around that like says that you have to turn it in or do anything, like I lost it in a boating accident. I don't know about you. So it's interesting too, the Armenian genocide, just to add a little injury to insult, you aren't allowed to talk about it in Turkey. I lived in Turkey for a year, and there's a lot of things you're not allowed to talk about, but Armenians in general are one of them. You shouldn't even mention Armenians. They don't exist, and definitely no one ever genocided them. So, just to add the censorship on top of the gun removal and then murder. That's Turkey for you. And that's, again, living in Turkey was one of the many times in my life where I started to realize, like, the United States is pretty fucking cool. I could definitely talk about Armenian genocide in the United States. I could definitely talk about the color of eyes of the now long dead leader, Ataturk. I don't remember if his eyes are blue or green, but I would be in deep trouble if I said that out loud in Turkey, because they are either blue or green, and if you say they're blue or green and they're actually the other, then you're fucked. They actually made us rip out a page of a book we were teaching because his eyes were said to be the right color, but the picture colored them the opposite color. I am not joking you. The book was Persepolis. It's a really good book. It's a graphic novel, and we had to rip pages out of it. I'm seriously, that is what happened. And so that's not even that bad. That's a pretty good country as far as countries go. It's fucked up. It's fucked up in most places. So the United States has a lot of guns. There is a lot of discussion about whether or not the Second Amendment was ever meant to give us the personal individual right to own guns, or whether it was meant to give militias, as in groups of organized soldier-ish people of an unofficial capacity, to have guns together. But there's some interesting things, which are who was not allowed to own guns. And this is again telling about why powerful organizations like government would want to keep guns from certain people. So guns were common in colonial and revolutionary America, as was gun restrictions. Laws included banning the sale of guns to, shock, Native Americans, or indentured servants, or slaves. So you couldn't, obviously, they don't want the people that they're literally owning and controlling to be able to escape or defend themselves against slavery and indentured servitude and the stealing of their land and entire culture. Right? There was a law in 1792 that required every man eligible for militia service to own a gun. That's kind of a much neater law. I like to go that direction rather than the others. So black people couldn't own guns for a time. If you were going to own guns, you had to be a free white man. And they say free for a reason, because white people were enslaved too. We just called it indentured servitude. Love to point that out, because apparently you're not allowed to. Apparently I'm a racist for saying so, but it is a fact. So, indentured servants, slaves, and just black people, whether they were free or not, could not own guns. And blah, blah, blah. Then we just went piece by piece into all of these various steps of gun control throughout time, almost always in response to crisis. And we could look back at many of those and see that they're false flags meant to make us scared. Remember, fear is that sword that they chop our fucking head off with, meant to make us scared enough to give up our guns. And I'll admit, the people who I've known in my life who were the most anti-gun were people who have been shot or near shootings or had someone they known shot. And I can understand that. If a horse trampled the fuck out of my loved one and killed them, I might be afraid of horses. But what I wouldn't do is try to force every other human being to never interact with a horse, because I'm not insane. I don't pretend that my fucking life is somehow your business, or that it like should force you to act in a certain way, because I'm not ridiculous and broken. And so we have much more gun control now. What's amazing is we have more gun control than we ever have, and people are still like, well, we should at least have background checks. And I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, there's nowhere where you don't have background checks. For actual guns like that you're buying from, that are like semi-automatic weapons of a modern nature, there is no situation where that's happening. But they're just uneducated. It's just like people don't understand what an AR-15 is. They think it's some sort of military level like weaponry, and it's like just a fucking gun like every other gun that exists. They're all semi-automatic. And they're like, some states ban assault weapons. Like, what isn't an assault weapon? It's a weapon. Like, fucking, everybody's just stupid. They're too stupid to know their history. They're too stupid to think through things. They're just told by the media to be scared of something and then react, and then they do, because they're emotionally fucked. And if you're emotionally fucked, you're super easy to control by the people who don't even have emotions. They're literal psychopaths. They can't. Or they know how to manipulate you and yours. So this is why it's so important that you heal yourself of every single emotional issue you have. Do it until you're done. Don't stop, because every single one of those little breaks in your soul can be used against you. So in the past year, we've had like skyrocketing gun and ammunition sales, and we all know that. And it makes me happy. I wish more and more people can get more and more guns. No, for any reason. It's great. I'm super excited about it. So it's interesting. In Cuba, we have communism. And the coverage of that from our country is very interesting. These protests in Cuba are happening, and we know that this first line is most accurate. Anti-government activists. They're anti-government. And what is the government in Cuba? It's communist. So they're anti-communist government activists. A lot of people have been arrested in these protests that they've been having. A lot of people have been beaten, oppressed. This is tyranny, remember? And yet our people here are trying to frame this in so many strange ways. Let's see. Where do they get to the good stuff? As Cubans complain about lack of food and medicine as the country undergoes a grave economic crisis. So, I mean, that's part of it. They are like, yo, you can't even fucking get us food and medicine. Why are we doing communism? The whole point was that we would all share everything that there is and have enough. And we don't. So what the fuck? But the thing that they're tying it to is that it's aggravated by the COVID-19 pandemic and U.S. sanctions. The U.S. sanctions have not been on food and medicine, so that's just a flat-out piece of shit lie. And of course it's aggravated by a worldwide economic downturn because of the control of worldwide governments. But it's not, but in this specific instance, it is against the communist government, and they're chanting freedom and holding United States flags because they would like to not have communism. But we can't, for some reason, just admit that. Because we are right now undergoing a large psyop for many years now to try and get more and more people to joyfully accept and even fight for communism in this country. Some fucking idiots are blaming the U.S. for whatever reason. I don't know how the fuck it would be our fault that their government is not giving them food or medicine or whatever, but allegedly it is. I mean, we're responsible for the whole world, really. So stupid. Blah, blah, blah. Journalists have been detained. There was something in here I really wanted to find. Let's see if I can find it. It was so stupid. It was about Trump. I don't think it was this. No. Okay, it's not in this article. It must have been a different one. But they were like, not only are they protesting against like U.S. sanctions and the COVID-19 pandemic, but they're also protesting because when Trump was elected president, the country's morale just fell and plummeted and they've never recovered. I'm like, this is insane. They're still trying to blame everything on Trump somehow. So just Trump's election crashed a whole country's morale. Like, this is fucking retarded. Even though most legal immigrants from Cuba voted for Trump and like Trump, somehow that whole country was just devastated emotionally by the election of Trump. I was like, the propaganda is so thick and heavy. It's like it's hard to even find fucking anything that tells the truth. But it's interesting. Check this out. So this is CNN. One reported dead in anti-government protests. Same exact picture, same exact article, basically. But Cubans take to the streets in rare protests over lack of freedoms and worsening economy. So they got caught not admitting that it was anti-communist protests and that they're pissed that the government want to overthrow it and not have communism anymore. They got caught with that. So now they have to admit that it is for freedom, but they are also going to tie it to the worsening economy. They're going to tie it to COVID. They're going to say that it's rare because they don't want to admit that in communist countries such as this, it's actually like a lot of people are really pissed about the communist system. They have to do all of this to try and control your thoughts about it. They can't just let you know the actual truth. So I thought that was interesting. And of course, Black Lives Matter, our resident communist, fascist takeover group. I'm not saying it, but she's saying that it's a thug cast. They released a statement on communist Cuba, and it's exactly what you'd expect because they're communists. In nature, they're trained Marxists. It's a Marxist organization. Anyone who says that that's fake news did not do any research on Black Lives Matter. Their leaders are trained Marxists, and they say it, they avow it, they uphold it, they fight for communist revolution. They released a statement attacking the United States and upholding Cuba's communist government, which is currently attacking journalists and protesters physically and jailing them for speaking out. That's what Black Lives Matter supports. It isn't surprising because they have to support other communist governments. When I was a communist, you have to support all other communist governments, and you have to support any country that is fighting towards communist takeover. You have to, even if some of the things they're doing are wrong in your opinion, because the goal is to get worldwide communism, and that's what you're fighting for. It's not about your country and your region and your location. It's about the whole world becoming communist. Black Lives Matter, as trained Marxists would know that. And so they're going to uphold the communist government because they have to keep that communist government. They can't let people overthrow it, even if that's the people's will, even if that's that place's will for themselves and their own sovereignty's choice. They still have to support this government. So this should show you exactly who they are if you didn't know before. They're liars. They're like, this embargo, this economic embargo is to blame. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. So that's Black Lives Matter. Releases a statement on Cuba praising the communist government for harboring fugitive cop killer Assata Shakur, or whatever. I don't really care about that. So that's happening. Black Lives Matter, by the way, has not just communists, but also many terrorists, and I'll add pedophilia related people and charges and organizations that are all up in their shit. I don't know anything good about the Black Lives Matter organization. They haven't done anything good for black people. All of the billions of dollars that people donated, where the fuck is it? Who's being helped by it? All of these people whose children or friends or lovers or whatever were shot by police and killed by police are openly saying now, like, we haven't gotten a fucking dime. We haven't gotten any help or support. They just used our child's name and image to, like, foment fucking anger and then took off with it, and we didn't get anything out of it. It just made our lives harder. That's Black Lives Matter. Terrorists, communists, and pedophiles. And of course, it was never even about Black lives. It was never even about George Floyd. It was never about BLM. It was never about communism even. It was about these motherfuckers using whatever they could to get more concentrated control. And that's it. Sacrifice was beneficial. Absolutely. So we had all these mass killings under communism. This is different from the gun confiscation killings. They're very much connected. They sometimes overlap, but there's even more just from communism, period. And there's all this bullshit about them arguing like what is and isn't killing and what deaths do and don't count and who did or didn't do it, blah, blah, blah. But communist states where mass killings have occurred include the Soviet Union, multiple times, not just once. The Red Terror is a period during the Bolshevik Russian Civil War in which communists killed a bunch of people. Joseph Stalin himself killed a bunch of people. They had mass deportations of ethnic minorities, so we're all like, oh, let all the fucking immigrants in without legal paperwork or processes or anything. Just fucking let them through. Like, who even cares who they are or what their past is or what or who they're bringing with them for what reasons. And we're pretending like we're doing this all for the goodness of our hearts, but when it really came down to it, we would absolutely have systems where we would choose castes of people and to genocide and kill because it's convenient and it's easier to have more power and more goods and services when less people are around. And these people are all eugenicists, so of course they take advantage of these times to kill everyone. There was the Soviet famine, not outright murder, but incidental murder. There's the Great Purge in the USSR, killing all kinds of people that didn't go along with the official agenda. So many mass graves, so many dead bodies. It's disturbing to look at. Soviet killings during World War II. There's a lot of debate about all of this shit, but obviously tons of people died in support of or under communism. The People's Republic of China has like 20 billion fucking examples, including the campaign to suppress counter-revolutionaries. The Great Leap Forward, which I was just trained to love. The Great Leap Forward, where women finally got freedom from the horrifying oppression of having families and lives. In Tibet, China has killed massive amounts of people because you're not allowed to be religious, remember. Cultural revolution is happening right now in the United States, some might argue, in which you are either with the agenda or against the agenda. And if you're against the agenda, you'll be canceled, mocked, killed, shamed, imprisoned, or whatever. Anything goes. Tiananmen Square, we're all familiar with. In Cambodia, we had the massive killing fields. Just so many people. 20,000 grave sites alone, perhaps, maybe more. Each mass grave site has who knows how many thousands or millions of people. They're the Khmer Rouge. And we also have Bulgaria, Romania, East Germany, Poland, North Vietnam, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, North Korea, Cuba, Laos, Albania, Soviet Union, China, Cambodia, we already said those, Yugoslavia, and more. And we can read about all those too. This is just communism. Just communism. We could also see if we could compile lists of like non-communist, you know, allegedly capitalist or otherwise governments and what they did. I'd argue if those populaces had weapons and weren't yet under this delusion of abdication of self-responsibility and giving all power over to the centralized state, that probably there'd be a lot less. But governments by far are the leading cause of death in history, so it is fair to point that out. Communism just seems to be even worse. And of course, Black Lives Matter had a specific stated goal on their site. It's not fake news. You can go find it on the Wayback Machine. It exists to disrupt the nuclear family. That is a Marxist goal specifically, and there's a reason why you would target the family in order to carry out communist revolution, because people with families that are stable, who feel loved, are not usually generally broken enough to go along with these types of schemes. They don't need this kind of groupthink and identity mongering in order to feel like they are connected to something meaningful, because they were raised in connection with something more meaningful than that. A strong family makes a strong nation. I just got this today in a fortune cookie after I put all of this together, and I just thought it was so interesting how well it fit, that the strength of a nation derives from the integrity of the home. And this is a statement by Confucius, and we can criticize Confucius in China and blah, 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 but the general tenet is the same. If you have a healthy family and a healthy home, then the people in your family and home are much less likely to commit atrocity or go along with atrocity that is committed, or to need that level of groupthink and abdication of self-responsibility that goes along with communist takeover. Period. So there's a reason why they attack the family. It's crazy how intentional and disruptive and really keyed in this progress of communism and the communist ideology is. It's very much targeted to specifically attack everything that would stand in the way of this centralization of absolute tyrannical fascist power. So that was an interesting synchronicity with this fortune cookie today. Check in with the chat. Pedivores is right, as Sturberry. Esoteribar. I'm gonna get it someday. Esoteribar. Esoteribear. Esoteribear, I got it. You're absolutely right. Jesse Manganelli is in the house. BLM and Antifa are run by the U.S. government, Jesse says. You're absolutely right, in my opinion. And just like I was pointing out that my glorious communist leader was most likely a CIA operative, it is quite likely that most people in BLM and Antifa are not in any way aware of their use by the government for an agenda, and that key people are running those types of things. So, Rob B, is not all government bad? Absolutely. It is. It is bad, all of it. That's why anarchy is best. Gotta figure out this chat function. Oh, hi, Ellis. Hi, Ellis, whose life's passion is apparently what I'm talking about. The legitimate anti-war left is also targeted. True, true. Thomas Chauncey is here. Nice to see you. I'm sorry I'm skipping all over the chat because something weird is happening with my chat where I'm not able to just like scroll through and see people. So I'm just bopping around trying to see what I can. Snake Jones says, that's the war Boa fought in. He had a chance as a sniper to kill Pol Pot. He requested permission to kill, and it was denied. Yeah, because all this is run by the psychopathic elite. There is no actual division amongst countries or rulers. It's just the pieces that they're moving along the chessboard to get the rest of us, the masses, to willfully give up our sovereignty and to go along with this bullshit, because they need our consent. It's a spiritual war at the heart of it. We sometimes get into the political and social of it, the shallow end of it, just to remember where this all comes from and what's actually happening in other people's minds and hearts right now, too. Mind-controlled killing machine. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if I would have followed those orders. I think I would have just killed. Been like, what are you gonna do? Kill me? Oh well. I just saved a bunch of fucking trouble. How do we even know if the Pol Pot story is even real? Totally. I'm with you, dude. I don't know if any of this is real. I'm just going with what they're telling us so we can see where people's psychology is, but I'm absolutely with you. Yeah, Illuminati, your chat too. So it's not just me, which is good to know. And over in the YouTubes, Project Cheney, what's up? Windhammer, what's up? Nick Lopez, what's up? Krista, what's up? All you guys, nice to see you. Strong families create strong people, Nick Lopez says. That's absolutely right, Nick. And if any of y'all want to jump over to Rockfin, it's where the real action is. So I also wanted to point out, we're talking about this personal responsibility, and we're talking about who are the types of people that go along with things like communist takeover and armed revolution in the streets that's actually unplanned and disorganized and chaotic without knowing the end goal or how to take care of themselves, even let alone an entire nation that they've then conquered. It's people like this. I don't mean to be super judgmental and shallow, but when you look into the faces and eyes of many of these people, it seems very obvious that they're suffering from who knows what. Emotional, mental, drug abuse, I don't know. A lot of them, very clearly. Right? And some of them, whatever, they're just like people, but you can just see, like, what is happening in your soul. Not good things, right? Who abused you? Somebody. Like, you're hurt inside and something is wrong, and now you think you can run a nation. It's insane. It's crazy. And you see this over and over again in the people who are arrested in connection with these Antifa and BLM riots that are going on. And people are like, oh, they're just trying to create change. I'm like, but I don't trust these people to make change. They can't even like brush their teeth or wash their face. It's not judgmental to expect you to take care of yourself first before you pretend like you can take care of a nation or the world. And so I've seen many worse than what we're even looking at now, where it's like, it's very clearly a section of them are possibly even entity influenced or demon possessed. And we've seen them literally summoning dead people in the streets. And very recently I heard that they were dumping pig blood on certain locations, which is also somewhat reminiscent of occultist and satanic worship, which is interesting in connection with their open summoning of dead spirits. It's not a fucking joke. You can go find it. I did an episode on that too. These people are not well. Just like I said about the people who I worked with when I was a communist agitator and organizer, none of them were well. Not even a little bit. I was not well. And none of us had any business trying to pretend like we could tell other people how to run their selves. And happiness really does depend upon ourselves. And it is, I think, the last lesson that someone learns before becoming well is this radical acceptance of responsibility for yourself. That, yeah, you maybe even got raped. You maybe got the shit beat out of you over and over again. Maybe horrible things happened to you, and it's still no one's fault that you're unhappy but yours. Sorry, radical truth. I've been through all the shit All the fucking shit. Wait, I could list the shit. People would be like, how are you even still functioning? I get that. When I tell people my story, they're like, how are you walking and functioning? Why are you happy? It's because I learned that happiness literally comes from inside of me and that no one else could ever control it. They can't beat it or rape it out of me, and they also can't create it within me or give it to me. I have to do that for me. And it's then you can, by extension, understand that that's true of everything in your life, right? You could so happen to just have like money and houses and all this shit dumped on you. And so I guess technically some things in your life could actually literally be controlled by others. But in general, no one's going to work for you to have the things you want but you. No one's going to work for you to have the garden you want but you. Nobody's going to work for you to have the clothes or the makeup or the hairstyle you want but you. And happiness is the biggest of these. No one's going to work for the happiness that you want but you. No one can give it to you. And if you think that someone else can, you're suffering under the delusion that every codependent person suffers under, which is that your happiness depends on someone else, or that any of your emotions depend on someone else or some outside circumstance. It's just not true. It's much harder to be happy in the face of like rape or someone brutalizing your friends or the economy failing or these things. And at the same time, you can't expect those things to ever be anything. They're outside of your control and they always will be. And so who's going to make you happy? Not them, not that, nothing outside of you, just you. It's easier to be happy if you're surrounded by puppies and flowers and sunshine and like food and friends that treat you well and all of that. And you can create all that much easier if you are coming from a place of wholeness and understanding that you create your own happiness and reality. So yeah, it can be easier or harder. I get that it's not easy to heal from, especially really torturous, horrendous abuses. And at the same time, no one's ever going to heal that but you. And if you don't heal it, you're going to hurt other people and you're going to destroy your society. That's the end of that story. So it is a painful thing to look at your own trouble and know that you yourself and no one else has made it, says Sophocles. It is a painful thing. It's hard. It's hard to look around at your life and be like, wow, my piece of shit life is my own fault and my own choice. And therefore, but it's equally as empowering because you're like, therefore, I can actually do anything fucking else I want. I can go do anything. I can get any job I want. I can move anywhere I want. I can work hard enough to save whatever money I want. I can quit a bunch of shit that I don't actually need in order to save money. I have all this power, actually. I can do fucking anything. So it is painful. It is hard. Especially hard if you're still in the middle of it and you're still suffering under the delusion that all of your pain is someone else's fault and that there's nothing you can do about it. That is a really hard place to be. I'm sorry for you. And eventually you have to admit it, and then eventually that's what will set you free. That's what will empower you to be free, truly, truly free, because no one then could ever take anything from you nor give anything to you, and you are in charge of everything. That's so powerful. That is every single one of you listening. Like, I guess, whatever. No single drop of water thinks it is responsible for the flood. This comes back to something that we talk about all the time here, which is this concept that if you save all of yourself, you save all of the world. And this entire episode has been one slice of that pie. Right? That you have to take care of yourself so that you don't get involved and drawn into these emotional, psychological operations, which ask you to actually commit horrendous crimes against humanity. And you think you're being righteous and you think you're helping people, and in fact, you're harming everybody. You can't do that if you're a healthy person, like we talked about. So you save all of yourself, you heal all of yourself, you take radical responsibility for all of yourself. Now, not only can you not be used in these psyops and these emotional manipulations, but you also now are adding to the general likelihood that, in fact, there will be an ocean born of people exactly like you that no dam or wall or geoengineering or weather manipulation could ever stop the flow of. So you heal all of yourself and you are one more drop. And you don't think that you're responsible for the flood that's going to happen, but in fact you are. Because saving all of yourself does save all of the world. And you do create this ocean together with all the other people who have also saved themselves. And every single person counts in that. It's like critical mass. It's like we were talking about on Middle Path the other night with the Schumann resonance and harmonic teleportation. You're putting even more of that likelihood that that wavelength gets picked up by other people. You're like me, going to speak out about shit, and then other people are going to be like, huh, is it really true that like that person who beat the shit out of me isn't in charge of my happiness? And then you're going to start to unleash all of this healing in other people, and it's just a tsunami eventually. That's what we're aiming for. But it starts with you. It's 100% with you. It's within you. It has nothing to do with anything outside of you. You have to heal yourself. And 100% of us have things we still need to heal. So, let's not congratulate ourselves just yet. We're proud of ourselves for our progress, and we also know that there's more. And we're going to continue to be more and more responsible for ourselves and upholding all that is good and true and beautiful. Windhammer says, dang, they're doing Marina Abramovic moves with the pig's blood. Yeah, for real, right? It's fucked up. They're like, let's just carry this shit. Fucking, what's up, Kyle, Landrum, and Green Muse? Nice to see you guys. The U.S. government preys on the weak, Jesse Manganelli says. Absolutely. Absolutely. Every psychopath preys on the weak. Every psychopath, narcissist, sociopath, borderline personality disorder, and even codependent people prey on the weak. You notice once you start getting healthy, the codependent and psychopathic people around you will fucking freak out. They will freak out where you did nothing. You could just be you and just be calm and healed, and they will fucking freak out at you because they do not know how to handle people who don't go along with the emotional delusion. It's really powerful. It's really freaky. I dare you to try it. It was one of my favorite things as I was healing, to just like not participate in some moments, but just be there. And people like got violent with me, yelled at me, cried at me, and I didn't even do anything. I just didn't go along with the delusion. It was insane. Maybe we see it now on a mass scale, when people are like dropping each other left and right because they're like, you didn't vote how I wanted you to, and like you're like fucking toupee lover or something. It's just so fucking weird. People are like, I can't talk to you anymore because you like posted a meme. And anyway, we've been friends for like 30 years and you can't talk to me anymore? Wow. But it's the same thing because you're not going along with their delusion, and their subconscious psyche, whatever, is telling them, like, get away from this dangerous person. Because if you keep interacting with this person, this facade I built you that is protecting you right now from the truth of how horrifying shit is right now is going to break, and you're going to realize all of that, and that is not going to be fun for you to face. So ditch this person. And we're seeing it everywhere. This mass delusion, you don't go along with it, you're really a danger to people. So, is that William Casey, or was it, oh shit. Illuminati says, we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American people believe is false. I thought that was Bernays. Oh, I guess it was William Casey, though. Yeah, they say that. I mean, they want everything to be an illusion. That's why sometimes I am like, I don't even know if any of this that we've just talked about is real, but this is what at least is affecting people's psyches, and so we can at least look at it from that perspective. So if there's one single belief that people should cultivate, it is that we are ultimately responsible for our own health, and that it is up to us to take this responsibility seriously and not simply entrust it to others who claim to have answers but have their own agenda. And I liked this because it pairs very nicely not only with this entire communist psychological emotional fuckery and that relies on broken people to carry out the concentration of power agendas, but it also pairs extra nicely with the entire past year and a half or so, where people have suddenly decided that it's super cool to give their entire sovereignty and health responsibility over to these nebulous organizations that have never proven any sort of care or concern for their lives. It is even more important now, more than ever, that we take responsibility for ourselves, not just our emotional and mental health like we've really been focused on in this episode, but our physical health as well, and our spiritual health as well. Because as we saw in my specific story, your spiritual understanding and truth can actually be, oops, so used to doing that I forgot. I just have this whole other scene with my picture already there. Oh yeah. Oh, I just realized I could do something really cool. Sorry, guys. But yeah, it's so essential. I feel like I beat a dead horse. I hope you guys don't get sick of hearing me talk about self-responsibility and healing yourself. But it's such a radical concept, and it's unfortunately radical. It shouldn't be in our society. It should just be like the thing we understand, like the thing that's true. But they've worked so hard. If you watch like the progress of these people, these fucking psychopaths attack on humanity and trying to get us to give up and agree to this conglomeration of concentrated power and abdicating our sovereignty and self-responsibility, it's been step by step, calculated as fuck. And we just have gone along with it because it's hard. It's hard not to. We really are, in general, very good people, and we don't expect this level of just psychologically treachery and just backstabbing and fucking evil. We don't. We just think we're good. Why isn't everybody else good too? You know, there's a couple bad apples. Like, no, this is a very calculated agenda that's been carried out for who knows how long, thousands of years perhaps at the very least. It seems like a couple hundred since the reset. And, you know, they understand us intimately. And Michael Wan was on a long ass time ago. One of the first few times he was on, we were talking about how strange it seems. And he brought up this idea, how strange is it that it seems like we are almost like biological robots, and they, whoever they is, seems to know exactly what buttons to push to get us to react in certain ways. And I don't necessarily think that we're like biological robots. I do think we have tendencies which have been exploited, and I do think that we have allowed ourselves to fall into traps because it's so much easier to be like, oh, none of this was ever my fault, and I'm just a poor victim, and now someone's going to take care of me, and I'm doing the right thing for everyone. Like, that's so enticing. Not only do you not have to look at yourself and take care of yourself, it's the hardest work you ever do. The hardest work you ever do is heal yourself. Hardest work I've ever done. And I've worked my fucking ass off for like since I was like very, very young in both physical labor and like academic pursuits and all of it. Worked my ass off, and the hardest shit I've ever done is to heal myself. It's hard fucking work. So not only do you get to not do that, but you get to also just get this victim status. It's a status in our society. You get points for it. It's like, oh, tell me your sob story. Oh, poor thing. Oh, poor you. Let's heap all this attention on you. But then you also get this outside entity that's just going to give you stuff. And like, we got these people hooked in this past year. They're like, here, just take some of this money, just sit at home, just watch TV. And we're like, yeah, I'm going to like finally get paid to play video games. And like, this is awesome. Meanwhile, the world is fucking crumbling, and they're like initiating the end stages of Agenda 21 or whatever to fucking control the entire human population. Technological aspects, from biological aspects, from fucking political, social, economic, all of it. They've got it fucking locked down in the bag. It's way too easy to go along with that shit. It's way too easy to give up our responsibility. What's really true, though, what's even more true than that, is that as hard as it is to face shit, as hard as it is to like look and be like, oh fuck, I was wrong, and I like fucked up, I made all these mistakes, and I hurt myself, and I hurt other people, and that's hard to admit. But it's actually so freeing. And like I said, it's so empowering because you finally understand, truly, like understand, like really get it experientially, that you're actually a hella powerful being. And that's why they fucking had to do all this shit to convince you in your mind and your heart to give up. They had to do all of that to get you to this place where you fucking gave up. They had to do all of that. You are actually retardedly powerful, like fucking powerful as fuck. And all it actually takes for you to be that powerful is to heal and be whole and claim that sovereignty and know it and act as though that are true. That is true, and that's it. That's really it. It sounds simple, and people are like, this can't be really what it is. No, that's really what it is. That's really why they worked this hard. That's really why they have to get your consent. That's really why they have to manipulate you emotionally to get you to do these things that are unnatural and against your own interest. And so it seems hard, and it seems like, but it's hard because the inertia is against you. You've been going the other way. It's hard because the entire fucking world seems against you because they're all under the spell. It seems hard for all those reasons. It's actually once you get to that stage where you realize your own sovereignty and freedom and power, it's actually easier than it's ever been. Because when you really like are in that place and you understand the truth of your soul on a spiritual level, and that all of this is not actually you or your real life or existence in many ways, it's real, it matters, but you know what I mean? Truthfully, you're beyond that. You can't be controlled. You're absolutely free. Nothing can really scare you anymore. And no other motherfucker is ever going to in any way direct you. You're going to direct yourself. That's actually way easier. That's actually way better. That feels better. Your heart and your soul like sing. You're like, holy shit, it's like expansive as fuck. Like the whole universe just opened up. Like, whew, that's amazing. So I know there's people out there who fucking will hate hearing me talk about this. And it's just like when, you know, some black person who's actually heard and isn't a victim and is kind of speaking the same truth that I am. It's just like they're going to be called like things that I can't say because I'll get banned, you know, and self-hating and all of that, you know, just like lesbians and trans people who are like not going along with the agenda, and they're like, well, yeah, like we should have rights and be equal and shit, but like why are we fucking wearing dildos into a library hour with kids or whatever, you know, and they get called self-hating. It's just like that. People are going to look at me and they're going to be like, oh, well, she's like trapped by the capitalist paradigm and like indoctrinated, and she didn't have like the balls to have revolution or whatever fucking bullshit. And I get it, because you have to. If you're still trying to be stuck in all that, you don't have a response to my story, and you don't have a way to deal logically with this truth. And it's especially true if you can't look at yourself and heal yourself. So I get it, and that's going to happen, and I'm sorry for anyone who's still stuck there. It's cool, though, because if you have a logical thinking mind still and questions, you can't really refute the things that I've brought up. And if you were never in this agenda, and you never fell into the socialist, communist sort of psychological victim society, it is still good for you to see this, because there's other ways that psychological trap happens, and it's good for all of us to look at ourselves and see which parts of me haven't healed yet, which parts of me are trying to claim victim status, which parts of me would like to give up responsibility for which parts of my life, no matter how hard or oppressive or outward incoming they seem to be. We all have to stop and look at them and find the ways that we are actually responsible for them. I'm not saying we're at fault. I'm saying you're the only one who can heal yourself. No one else can. That's all. So we have to all do that, no matter where we are at politically or socially or whatever. And that's going to change ourselves, and that's going to change our lives, and that's going to change the world. And it's literally what's going to stop the communist takeover. Like, fuck, if you could do one thing, that's it. That's not that hard. So I know you're all doing it. I know the rogue warriors out here are like the best at this exact understanding and rectifying their own lives in order to save everyone and everything. So I know you're all doing it. I know you rule. Being Now says, I almost have to applaud how diabolical it is to be undiscovered by the majority. I know. I fucking talk about that all the time. I'm like, I don't want to admit how fucking elegant and beautifully sickening and horrifying their plan has been. It's just come to fruition, it seems. I like to also imagine that we've thwarted it a billion times and that they're just like always scrambling to try and catch up, because that makes me happy. But I'm with you, dude. It's like, how did you get this genius? How did you get this genius? I really think there's extra dimensional intelligences involved in this for a long time. I don't think it's very human. And Windhammer points out one of my favorite facts, which is their hubris is breathtaking. That's absolutely true. Hubris is breathtaking. Our hubris will be their downfall. We know that. Yes, so many we love and care for have been lost, but so many have been saved too. And all those people that we've lost are fucking right by us, cheering us on, like all the time. If you just go into some inner reflection and ask them to like show themselves or let you feel them or whatever, like they're there and you know it. You know it. I know it's still hard. I'm just saying. They're there. They're there. They're rocking with us. Yeah, Illuminati was saying My mom is pretty affected by what Dr. Tenpenny is saying. Dr. Tenpenny, of course, is speaking out against this whole illusion of the medical nature that's going on right now. And but when she said it's not FDA approved, my mom just couldn't accept that. Her programming wouldn't allow it. I know what you mean, dude. Talking to people who are still caught up in it and even sharing things not as radical as that, but true, but factual, where you can like say like documented, like this isn't even a conspiracy theory, no one's contesting it, it's just not being reported on. And people are like, no, that's not real, it's not happening, and then they just change the subject. And you're like, wow, like your delusion is thick. It's a big deal, actually. That's like what's ruining the world is your delusion. No offense. I'll help you through it if I can, but like, dude, you have to fucking heal yourself. Programming is very strong because the psychological and emotional harm is very strong and very deep. You know, I often wonder, like, did something happen to us as a species that like fucked us up? Our genetic memory and our epigenetic memory is like carrying this trauma, and it's like triggered and triggered and triggered and triggered, and we're traumatized over and over again. It just keeps getting deeper and deeper. Like, we have to fucking wake up. Don't go deeper. Go up. Come out. They are very good at what they do. Yeah. Illuminati says, we could defeat them pretty easily if it were only humans we were dealing with. I say we can defeat them easily either way. We just have to save ourselves. Like, individually, independently, just you, just here, just now. That's it. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. If everyone did that, it'd be over. We wouldn't have to fight anyone. We wouldn't have to fucking, like, agitate or foment anything. Nothing. It would just be done. That they rely on and count on. They desperately need our breakdown, our wreckage of personal self in order to create everything they're doing. All of it. I can't emphasize it enough because it's a radical understanding somehow, but it is actually true. That's why they've had to work so hard. You see it the more you look. Strong delusion, yes. Shakim says, if people were more inspired to spread truth, things would change faster. That's true too, although look at how people react to the truth. But yeah, if more people were doing it, it'd be harder to live in delusion for sure. Cavi says that James Corvette says, you can't wake those who are only pretending to be asleep. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I'm saying, there's people who, like, that's why they're cutting you out. Some part of them knows that you're going to force them to recognize the truth just by being you, and they cannot hang. Oh, thank you, Racing Ray, for the very nice compliments. Foxhole. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I might be joining that network coming up soon is my intention and hope. So, whoops, hope to see more of you there and here. Nothing's going to change as far as what is going on with Rogueways and Middle Path and when it's happening and all of that, but there may be an additional show I'm doing every week or more coming up soon. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but could be very exciting. So really look inside, as I always suggest that you do, that all of us do. Really find all the places in yourself that feel hurt or feel like blaming others or feel like it is the fault of someone else that you are where you're at in any way. Ask yourself to go deep into that space and find out the root of that, and then find out your responsibility for it. It's always true that it takes two in some way. Unfortunately, even in situations of horrible abuse, it's often true. And at the very least, even if that isn't true, which sometimes it really isn't, but even then, you are responsible now for healing yourself. And we see this, good healers will tell you this, right? That, like, you actually have to heal yourself. I can support you and help you, but you have to heal yourself. And you are not your ancestors, and you are not your childhood self, and you are not your trauma, but you are responsible for healing all of that. Once you heal yourself, you're going to heal generational trauma and past ancestral trauma as well. You fucking awesome warrior, you. So until you reach deep inside, find all those broken pieces, put them back together with the power of love and truth, and then reach even further back and do it for everyone else standing behind you so that you can show up to the final battle with armies of tribes of people standing at your back supporting you. Travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
I heard the man, they at it again, and I'm out to tell the truth once more. That's right. It's on the cracking, unknown in the house. APOGZ, that's right. Hitting the stereo near you. Truth is the best thing, and it's on. Yo, I once thought that I wanted to get Denver on track, but there's something more bigger than that. Something lurking, waiting to blow this state right off the map. A hidden agenda related to September. Doves carved up on the wall next to the highway. Up in the concrete while rolling home next to where I stay. With state's destruction, like Key Martin malfunction. While NORAD's in the mountain anticipating our next move. My heart's jumping and I'm like, fuck waiting. While crooked taxes are burning a hole in my pocket. With $1 bill in the pyramid that's watching. Instead of having a capstone on top of it, they have an eye with a fast surprise while you're flossing it. Greedy niggas jocking it, politics plotting it. So who you vote for really doesn't mean shit. So save your energy from being drained by the enemy. Skull and bones of Freemasonry, envisioning dreams of them chasing me. Skull and bones of Freemasonry, envisioning dreams of them chasing me. Skull and bones of Freemasonry, secret agencies with a plan to dominate all of man. Check the records at DIA, strange murals and paintings similar to the ones next to the highway. With pyramids and flames underneath them looking like they're about to fly away. I can't be tripping, but it sounds like I'm on acid. Most people slipping, taken below DIA, held captive in the near future, where they won't hesitate to reinstate new laws for a bigger cause. I'm talking about established civilian concentration camps, introducing the military's labor programs. Expand your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you witness the belittlement of your people. Expand your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you witness the belittlement of your people.
Feds ain't stretching the truth, the script that he's spitting is true. Pay attention to what's going on or it might happen to you. When it's happening too, cellular communication monitor, behavior studied and controlled through chemicals bombing nerves. This word of Jesus ain't got anything to do with it, religious cynic, where experiments cage and lace in terms of accepting limits. Things that can't explain to the sky when I'm in the Rockies. Chakra systems limited due to the voltage overhead pipe. Mind control victims, slap clips and machine guns for recess. FCC will help us speak less, manipulate us through weak right now fiction with the CIA trying to kill me filthy. Talking about the underground facility at DIA, no one feels that place laced with hints. Notice whenever I return home, black sun references in a new world Masonic capstone. Croy and Area 51 workers the building, I don't mean to rant. In the face of an emergency, it doubles as a FEMA camp. Reaction, solution, trickery, repeated through history. NORAD's listening in using technology, tracking where you piss. I'm not even paranoid or just facing the fact. Better watch what you say, it's another day under the Patriot Act.
Extend your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you witness up a little bit of your people. Extend your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you witness up a little bit of your people.
The idea is to bring people to the point where they are helpless, passive, and unable to assert their own creative power to form anything else. Success for people like this is measured in terms of money, which they then translate into power.
Corruption and violations of the Constitution. Secret societies, the push for one world government. I'd like to get corruption and violations of the Constitution.
The idea is to bring people to the point where they are helpless, passive, and unable to assert their own creative power to form anything else.